Discipline is one of the most misunderstood words when it comes to life change. Most people believe that discipline is willpower, rigidity, or a strong personality. But science shows something quite different. Discipline is not a fixed trait. It is a trainable behavior, shaped daily by the way the brain responds to habits, rewards, and effort. The problem is that almost everyone tries to become disciplined in the wrong way. Forcing, pressuring yourself, punishing yourself when you fail. This creates a cycle of guilt and giving up. The brain learns to associate discipline with suffering and begins to avoid any attempt at consistency. But there are specific habits, validated by neuroscience, that change this equation. Habits that train the brain to act even without motivation, to sustain effort, and to maintain consistency without emotional wear and tear. They are not quick hacks. They are structural adjustments that reprogram the way the brain makes decisions. Disciplined people do not wake up motivated every day. They have simply built systems that reduce resistance and increase predictability. Their brains do not enter internal conflict with each task. It executes because it learned that it is part of the pattern. In this video, you will learn about 7 scientific habits that radically improve discipline. Simple yet powerful habits that alter brain chemistry, strengthen self-control, and create real consistency in study and life. If you feel that you know what you need to do but can't maintain consistency, subscribe to the channel now. Here, the focus is on deep productivity, behavioral psychology, and scientific methods to build true discipline. Because discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It's about training the brain to act in the long term. Before talking about specific habits, it is essential to understand how discipline really works in the brain. Discipline does not arise from momentary motivation. It arises from the repetition of behaviors that the brain learns to execute with less resistance over time. Whenever you act despite discomfort, neural circuits linked to self-control strengthen. The brain is driven by energy efficiency. He tends to avoid actions that seem unpredictable, painful, or confusing. When a task has no clear beginning, defined duration, or visible reward, the brain interprets it as a risk. The automatic response is to procrastinate. This is not laziness. It's cognitive protection. Disciplined people reduce this resistance by creating predictability. Defined schedules, clear tasks, and stable routines reduce the mental cost of action. The brain comes to understand that this behavior is safe, repeatable, and controllable. Over time, acting requires less conscious effort. Another essential point is the role of reward. Every time a disciplined action generates a sense of progress, even a small one, the brain releases dopamine. This release does not come only from the final result, but from the perception of progress. That is what sustains consistency. When discipline is built this way, it stops being a daily struggle. It becomes an automatic pattern. The brain stops negotiating and starts executing. The first scientific habit that radically improves discipline is reducing unnecessary decisions throughout the day. The brain has a daily limit of energy for making conscious decisions. Each small choice consumes part of this resource. What to wear, when to study, where to start. When this limit is exceeded, discipline collapses. Disciplined people do not make decisions all the time. They automate. They create predictable routines that eliminate the need for choice. Fixed schedule for studying, defined location, clear sequence of tasks. This preserves mental energy for what really matters. When you eliminate trivial decisions, the brain goes into execution mode. He doesn't argue. He just follows the learned pattern. This predictability reduces anxiety and resistance, 2 great enemies of discipline. Another important point is to always start in the same way. A small initial ritual signals to the brain that it's time to act. It can be sitting in the same place, opening the same material, or starting with the same simple task. This trigger speeds up the transition to action. Over time, this habit creates a powerful effect. Discipline stops depending on willpower. It starts to depend on the environment and routine. The brain learns that acting is easier than procrastinating. This is one of the silent secrets of consistent people. They are not stronger. They are more strategic. The second scientific habit that radically improves discipline is learning to start before you feel ready. The brain tends to overestimate the initial effort of any difficult task. The more you expect to feel clarity or motivation, the more resistance grows. Discipline strengthens when action comes before feeling. Studies in neuroscience show that the simple act of starting a task already reduces the activity of brain areas linked to aversion. The first few minutes are the hardest. After the brain realizes there is no real threat, the discomfort decreases and attention increases. Disciplined people understand this intuitively. They do not plan long periods of effort. They plan only the beginning. They set a short time to start, with no commitment to continue for hours. This small start breaks the inertia. Another important point is to eliminate the expectation of perfect performance at the beginning. When you demand maximum quality right from the start, the brain goes into defense mode. Allowing an imperfect start reduces pressure and facilitates action. Over time, this habit trains the brain to associate action with relief, not with suffering. Discipline strengthens because the brain learns that starting is not as difficult as it seemed. This principle applies to studying, work, and any demanding task. Discipline grows when you teach the brain that acting is safer than avoiding. The third scientific habit that radically improves discipline is using the environment as an ally, rather than relying solely on self-control. The brain is extremely sensitive to what is around it. What you see, hear, and touch directly influences behavior, often without you realizing it. Most people try to be disciplined in environments that sabotage discipline. Cell phone nearby, open tabs, constant noise, excessive visual stimuli. In this scenario, the brain goes into conflict. He needs to fight all the time to maintain focus, and that quickly consumes energy. Disciplined people organize their environment to make desired behavior easier and undesired behavior more difficult. The study material is accessible. Distractions are kept at bay. Small adjustments drastically reduce the need for willpower. Another important point is the consistency of the environment. Studying in the same place always creates a neural association. The brain learns that space is for focus and execution. Over time, entering that environment already activates the appropriate mental state. This habit also involves preparing the environment before the moment of action. Having everything ready eliminates excuses and reduces friction. The fewer obstacles between you and the task, the greater the chance of execution. When the environment works in your favor, discipline stops being a constant effort. It becomes the easiest path. The brain chooses to act because acting requires less energy than resisting. The fourth scientific habit that radically improves discipline is creating visible commitment to one's own behavior. The brain tends to take actions more seriously when they stop being just internal intentions. When everything stays just in your head, it's easy to negotiate, postpone, and rationalize giving up. Disciplined people externalize commitments. They record what will be done, set clear deadlines, and create some form of tracking. This can be a simple daily log, a list of completed sessions, or a marked calendar. The brain responds better when it sees concrete evidence of action. This habit works because it activates a strong psychological principle: the need for consistency. When you see yourself as someone who follows through on what you plan, breaking that pattern creates discomfort. And the brain prefers to maintain consistency rather than deal with that internal tension. Another important point is to make progress visible. Not just the final result, but the journey. Each completed session reinforces the disciplined identity. The brain learns that taking action generates a sense of progress, even if small. This type of commitment also reduces relapses. When the routine is broken, the record helps to quickly get back on track. Instead of abandoning everything, you continue the sequence. Over time, discipline stops being an internal battle and becomes an observable pattern. You don't need to convince yourself. The data speaks for itself. The fifth scientific habit that radically improves discipline is learning to act even on bad days. Most people build discipline only when everything is aligned. High energy, available time, favorable mood. When any of these factors fail, behavior crumbles. Disciplined people do not base their actions on the emotional state of the day. They adjust the intensity, but maintain the behavior. On difficult days, they do less, but they do something. This principle protects continuity and avoids the all-or-nothing effect. From the brain's perspective, this is crucial. Every time you act even with little energy, you reinforce circuits linked to persistence. The brain learns that action does not depend on perfect conditions. Over time, the resistance decreases because the pattern is already established. Another important point is redefining what counts as success these days. It's not maximum performance. It's presence. Sit down, start, move forward a little. This small advance keeps the disciplined identity active. This habit also reduces guilt and frustration. Instead of abandoning the routine for not being able to give 100%, you preserve consistency. And consistency is the true fuel of discipline. If you have ever felt stuck waiting for the perfect day to take action, feel free to comment here if this happens to you. This helps other people realize that they are not alone in this process. The sixth scientific habit that radically improves discipline is using rewards in the right way. Most people understand rewards incorrectly. Either they reward too much and lose the effect, or they only allow themselves to be rewarded when everything is perfect. Neither of the two strategies works well for the brain. From a neurological standpoint, discipline is sustained by the dopamine released during progress, not just at the final result. When the brain perceives progress, even a small one, it releases chemical signals that encourage the repetition of the behavior. That's why rewards need to be linked to the process, not just the end. Disciplined people create internal micro-rewards. They recognize that they have fulfilled what was planned. They feel satisfaction for having acted, not just for the performance. This recognition strengthens the action circuit. Another important point is to avoid rewards that sabotage the subsequent behavior. Using highly addictive stimuli immediately after effort can teach the brain to only act in exchange for intense pleasure. This weakens discipline in the long run. The best rewards are neutral and restorative. Conscious pause, sense of duty fulfilled, planned free time. The brain learns that acting generates relief and stability, not excess stimulation. When this habit is applied, discipline becomes sustainable. You don't depend on external motivation. The very act of following through with the plan becomes rewarding. The seventh scientific habit that radically improves discipline is regularly reviewing one's own behavior. Most people only realize they have lost discipline when they are already far from the desired standard. This happens because there is no conscious monitoring of the process. The brain learns better when there is feedback. Reviewing is not judging yourself, it's observing. Look at the week and understand what worked, what failed, and why. This simple act activates brain areas linked to adaptive learning. You don't repeat mistakes automatically. You adjust. Disciplined people use short and objective reviews. They don't make long or dramatic analyses. They only identify patterns. Days when they were more productive, days when they avoided tasks, factors that helped or hindered. This transforms discipline into something measurable, not emotional. Another important point is to use review to reinforce correct answers. The brain tends to focus on what went wrong. When you consciously recognize what worked, you strengthen the right circuits. Discipline grows faster when the brain clearly understands the correct path. This habit also prevents long relapses. When something goes off track, the review quickly brings you back. There is no total abandonment, only course correction. Over time, this practice creates behavioral maturity. You stop blaming yourself and start adjusting. Discipline stops being fragile and becomes resilient. When you observe these scientific habits together, you realize that discipline has never been about extreme willpower or a rare personality. Discipline is the result of a brain trained to act predictably, even when discomfort arises. And this completely changes the way you live, study, and work. Most people live trapped in cycles of trying and giving up. Starts motivated, loses momentum, blames themselves, and starts over from scratch. These habits break this cycle. They transform discipline into something stable, built day by day, without relying on fleeting emotional states. Over time, the brain comes to understand that acting is the norm. Procrastination becomes strange. Avoiding what needs to be done generates more discomfort than executing it. And it is at this point that discipline ceases to be a conscious effort and becomes identity. This is directly reflected in studies, career, and personal life. You start to trust yourself. You know that, regardless of the day, there is action. There is consistency. There is real progress. None of these habits work in isolation. But together, they create a powerful system. A calmer, more focused, and more resilient brain. A brain that learns to sustain effort in the long term. If this video made sense to you, subscribe to the channel now. Here you learn deep productivity, behavioral psychology, and scientific methods to build true discipline, without unnecessary suffering. Remember this. Discipline is not something you are born with. It's something you build by training your brain every day. And when this training consolidates, the results cease to be an exception and become the rule.